Hi, thanks for joining me today. My name is Lindsay. I'm the designer behind Doing the Most Design, and you can find me on Ravelry at Lindsay DTMD. I can't wait to show you what I've got in store for you for today's video. I want us to revisit very closely the anatomy of brioche stitches. I want us to take a second to look sort of at a bird's eye perspective of what it is that we are trying to accomplish. So as I mentioned a moment ago, you're basically knitting all of the stitches that are on a previous or two passes ago are knit. And then on the alternate passes, you will be purling stitches that are previously purled. Again, each time you're going to be joining together a yarn over plus a slip stitch. But again, in essence, every knit that exists, you're just going to knit that again. It'll just have a yarn over. Now, when you are looking directly at just one side of the fabric, it can look like there's a knit stitch with sort of a sine wave going up and down, up and down, up and down in the background. That is sort of the visual effect to me that is taking place. But in reality, again, what's happening is we're draping a long visible stitch in between basically one column of knits and one column of purls. So this is in short a one by one ribbing, but it is in technical terms a type of double knit. But taking a really close look at it, what we have here is a knit stitch that is hugged on either side by an elongated strand of the contrast color. The contrast color is sort of like a shawl or a jacket, and this main color stitch on the outside of our fabric is sitting in front of that yarn over or this shawl that we're looking at, the left sleeve and the right sleeve respectively, right? On the inside of our fabric, very similar process is taking place. We have our, let's look at this one here. We have our knit stitch. When we are knitting it, we are creating the stitch by purling because we're on the opposite side of the fabric. But we have a knit stitch right here that is hugged by this jacket with the left sleeve and the right sleeve. So this strand of fuchsia pink is going behind, up and behind this stitch that I'm holding up with my multi-tool. And then that strand goes up into the opposite side of the fabric and creates a knit stitch, which is, so if I put my tool all the way through this fabric, we're watching this fuchsia strand move up into this purl with the main color, and that becomes our column of knit stitches on this side. So every single boo-boo that we come across, and if you see several of them in your work, please don't fret, especially if this is the first time that you're doing brioche knitting. You are learning a new skill. Be kind to yourself. Everybody starts somewhere, okay? And you're going to get it one day. I believe in you. That's what we're here to do. We're here to learn together and get better at stuff. So I hope that that helps kind of illuminate for you what the forest for the trees situation is here with the brioche knitting. Hey, have you been learning? Have you been laughing? Leave me a comment down below about something that you got out of this video and hit that like and subscribe button for me, dude. Thanks. As you see here, I have knit several passes to create multiple rounds in order to build the brim of my hat. So here are some tips for thinking about how you can keep track of how far along you are going. If you've lost count with how many passes you've done, the number of rounds that you've completed are just the number of stitches of knits that you are looking at when you're looking at the outside of your fabric, which is going to be in your main color. And then just also remember that because our very first setup round was in the main color, then by the time we get to our final round or our final pass, we should have one more knit in the main color than we have knit in the contrast color. Up to this point in time, I have knit, as I mentioned, several passes. My most recent pass was in the contrast color, which is what you can see here. And then based on this pattern in particular, the contrast color is pass 1. and the main color is passed two to create one round. So in looking back at my most recent round that I've completed, or most recent pass that I've completed, my yarn overs are in my contrast color, which means that's the last strand that I used. So if you put down your project, because you have to go to sleep or like eat or poop or whatever, and then you come back to your project and you cannot remember what your last color that you've used was, it's whatever color your yarn overs are. That's the last strand that you used. My final little caveat here is that everything that I'm showing you to correct these stitches, you can avoid frogging and you can correct them with laddering. However, here where the yarn carries over between the rounds, so this is my beginning of round marker that is missing, but this is the beginning of round section right here. You can identify that because it actually looks like two knit columns side by side, because the herringbone rib for the very first stitch is much tighter than the herringbone stitches in other columns of the herringbone. So that's one way. If you ever drop your marker, you can tell this is your beginning because you have a relatively two tight knit columns and then a very tight herringbone column. So as you've been working through this, and I have mentioned to you that when you are finished with a round, you should always bring your yarn in front. Well, when you do that, you'll naturally create another yarn that is underneath of the yarn that you've brought forward. And so you should bring that yarn up and then behind the work if you are going to start knitting, or bring the yarn up and then keep it in front of the work if you're going to start doing purls. The problem, though, is that if you have started twisting up your yarns a lot like this, then that twist might become visible. If we take a real close look here, if I do this twist, and I kind of cut off a certain point here, this yarn that's coming downward now becomes the right-hand side of this herringbone. So if you are doing multiple twists between your two yarns like this, then instead of getting one clean color for that herringbone, you're going to probably get a little bit of a meld like this. And not only will you get a little bit of a meld like this, your herringbone, that right-hand side of that herringbone for that particular column might be really thick. So that is something that we do want to avoid, and no amount of laddering will fix your color orders. Now, the other problem is also true, that if as you are going along and you have been pulling your yarn in front, but you have been moving over with your second yarn, that can sometimes create a problem as well. So remember, our ideal scenario is that the strand that I've just finished using, I'm going to move into the front and out of the way. And then the yarn that I had holding aside that is in front, I am now going to pull that into deployment, right? And that will naturally create a clockwise rotation between your main color and your contrast color. That again is how we are going to eventually get our contrast color to show up very consistently as the right-hand side of this herringbone column. But if we end up twisting counterclockwise, like this, then really the color that's sitting on top is not our contrast color to create that herringbone, it's our main color. And so you might end up sort of choking off, or you might see like a blockage, so to speak, of the right-hand side of this herringbone for your beginning of round. So those are just some considerations. And if you have been twisting counterclockwise, then please know that no amount of laddering can fix that. I will admit that that is one scenario in which I do recommend that you frog your work. I know that's super disappointing to hear, but realistically, unless you can just live with the imperfection, and that's totally fine. If you can live with that, great, go for it. It's not worth the headache. But if it is worth the headache to you, then go ahead and frog if you've been twisting your yarns in the opposite direction. Thanks for making it to the end of this video. If you have not done it yet, hit like and subscribe so you can be notified when I put out more content for you. I'd love for you to connect with me on Ravelry at Lindsay DTMD. Check out my link tree for a collection of my projects. And if you're able to, leave a cash tip for me at my Ko-Fi page. All links are in the video description below. Don't forget to be kind to yourself as you learn, and thanks for spending your time with me. Bye.